Hello and welcome to Salina Scope. This is a program where we talk in depth about City of Salina services, projects, initiatives. And today on the program we have Martha Tasker, who's the Director of Utilities. Martha, welcome.
I'm glad to be here, talk about the important project we're working on.
Yeah. One of the most frequent questions we get is, what about the River Renewal project? What's happening with that? And I'm happy to say that we have a progress report event coming up, so let's dive right into that.
With my time of 20 years on the project as project manager, I've heard that question many times. What's up with the river? We're actually going to have an update on the project May 13th at Tony's Pizza Event Center in the Great Plains Convention Hall in the evening at 5:30. We'll have a presentation that'll talk about all of the elements of the project, talk about the cost, the schedule, and when people might see dirt moving. And then following that, at about 6:30, we should break out into open sessions that will have some display boards and city staff and engineering staff there to answer questions that someone in the community might have. So it's really a big update on the project that many have been waiting for. So we're still moving paper. We're not moving dirt yet, but we're getting closer.
Right. The design phase is taking quite a while, obviously because it's such a major project. But HDR is, I think I got that right, is the firm that's doing the design work, and they'll be there as well.
Yes,
right?
HDR Engineering Incorporated has worked with us since 2017, and they did the original 30% preliminary plans. Mm-hmm. So we're working, and that was for the entire 6.8 miles of the river channel. Now we're down to what we're calling the Phase 1 construction project, and it's really tied to the transportation grant that we received in 2022. So that's a project that we're currently designing. It has several elements, from 7 bridges, 2 pedestrian walkways, 3.5 miles of multi-purpose trail, maintenance building, mm-hmm. and 5 kayak and canoe launches. I could go on forever on how many elements there are, but we'll talk about all of that and talk about some of the aesthetics that we've tried to tie this project to look like, similar to our downtown project with Art Deco and some of the metal components of that. So a lot of effort has went into this, and community support, and also a lot of help with putting our plan together. We had a steering committee that spent several meetings with us for 2 hours for 12, 13 meetings to be able to come up with ideas. So we have a lot of input into our aesthetics, and we're going to share those at this meeting. And so I think it'll be a lot of interesting things to see that the community hasn't seen. And we'll talk about where we're at on design and when we actually will move some dirt and when we'll quit moving dirt.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Yeah.
This is made possible by something called the RAISE grant from the federal government, which was about $22 million. And as you mentioned, it includes replacing 7 bridges, which seems a little odd when we're talking about a river project. So why is it important to replace these bridges for the project?
Yes, we are working under a transportation grant that really works on safety and moving people. And when you think about our project, we're trying to move people, and when we do bridges, we're actually taking out old box culverts that restricted the flow. Mm-hmm. And when we put in these new bridges, actually, people think they're bridges, but they're box culverts. But right. When we put in these new bridges, many of them will have the ability for a pedestrian to cross under the bridge instead of crossing above in the street. And we have a couple of pedestrian undercrossings on North and South Ohio. So everything about the RAISE grant has to do with transportation and safety. So we need to open up those box culverts to bridges so the water can flow, and then have room as a part of our goal is to canoe and kayak the river channel.
Right.
And the box culverts would never allow that, and so the idea is we've opened it up, and everything we're doing has to do with safety. We're also replacing the old wooden wall down by the water plant on 4th Street and the railroad tracks. It's been there for decades. And so it's a safety feature. We're able to replace that as a part of this project. So it's interesting, and it's also about mobility of people, allowing them to have trails and traverse the city in many different modes of transportation. So that's how it falls under a transportation grant.
Yeah, yeah. With the box culverts, you never would be able to put a trail next to the river.
No, we wouldn't be able to go under the bridges because the box culverts are typically have some water in them, and they're 8-10 foot in diameter. So by the time you have water and someone trying to walk, there's just no headroom and space. So
Right.
we'll show some renderings at the meeting that'll show some of the concepts of the pedestrian undercrosses on South Ohio and some of what we propose for the bridges and how you'll be able to travel underneath those. We'll also talk about the 4th Street Plaza, which has a small section of boardwalk. Again, if we built everything in our 30% drawings, we'd be a $100 million plus project. So we're limited to our budget, and we're trying to build the most we can with the available dollars. And the RAISE grant, $22 million of funding, is a great help.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the other component of the project is through the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which has to do with the actual dredging of the river, correct?
That's correct. They're companion projects, and uniquely, they have about the same finish schedule, which is to have all the construction done by 2030. And if you think about it, if we're going to build the bridges, we'd like to build those while the river channel's dry, as opposed to having the water flowing. So the two projects match up. That project has to do with when the flood control dike was constructed and completed in 1960, the majority of the flow in the river bypasses along the east side of the city of Salina. And just a small volume of water went back through what we call the 6.8 miles of the old river channel that meanders through downtown. And the unintended consequence is all the sediment settled out, and it basically plugged off any flow to flow through that channel. So the ecosystem died, and it just kind of became a kind of an ugly area and a storm drain ditch. And the community is really interested in bringing that back to be an amenity that we can use.
Yeah, I think when you do release water into the old channel, it just kind of sits there. It doesn't move a whole lot. I mean, it moves, but not very
Well,
much.
we actually, on occasion, have to open the channel, remove some of the sediment out at the river in the event of the Smoky Hill River Festival and the car show, so that we can have some water in the channel. And basically, it's a giant coffee filter from out at Billbrook Park to Ohio Street. It's got 7 or 8 foot of sediment, and the water just trickles through there, and it never, when it gets down to the mill dam behind the community theater, it never overflows the dam unless we get a rain in town. So we can't really fill the channel, but at least we can get some water in the channel for those events to bring it more to look like a river.
Right. And now with the new trail that's behind the YMCA, that gives you kind of a preview of what's going to happen with the entire project.
Yes, that does give you a good idea. And when we say entire project, again, I mentioned if we built everything, it'd be well over $100 million.
Right.
So in this phase, we're using a combination of new multi-purpose trails and some on-street areas in the park and other areas to help us navigate from the full 6.8 miles. But that trail that you see down there behind the YMCA is a 10-foot wide concrete trail. And in most areas, that's what we'll be installing is 10 foot. I think we have an area too where we might drop down to 8 foot just because of the space we have to work in. But that's a long-term goal, is to have a trail from one end, the full 6.8 miles, which would be at Billbrook, out, wind through the city, and then end up out on North Street. And so, and there was already some trails on top of the flood control dike. So that this whole area would be where you could walk or ride your bicycle or canoe eventually.
Yeah.
Originally, not the whole 6.8 miles of canal channel will be cleared, but over time, that's the long-term plan. Once we get this first phase done and everyone gets a feel for what it could be, then what we've seen in other communities around us and those other phases happen a little faster.
Right. Okay, so I think the last time you and I talked off camera, the design phase was about 60% complete. It's probably a little more now. But I know the city staff and the engineering staff were out doing field checks, making sure measurements are correct and stuff. So
I think we're in that area of 60%. When we do the field checks on bridges, that's what we're doing is a 60% field check on bridges. And we've done 4 of those, and we still have 3 left, but they're much smaller bridges and less complicated areas that we've been in. And we've seen layouts of the trail, and we've seen the aesthetics. So we might be just short of 60%, but some is more than 60%, and some pieces are less than that. But our end goal is to finish our design in April of '26, which is just 1 year away.
a year, yeah.
And then to start construction in June of 2026.
Okay, all right. So we're getting close to actually moving dirt.
Yes, we're going to move some dirt here, at least in the near time. At least we're not talking in 7 years or 8 years. We're
Right,
next year.
right, yeah. That's exciting.
It is.
Okay, so make sure that we come to the progress report event on May 13th. The doors open, I think, about 5:15.
Yes.
Presentation will be at 5:30, and then the open house format will be after the presentation, probably around 6:30 or so.
Yes, that's correct. And if that's not a time someone could make, this will be on the city's Facebook and YouTube presentations of that live. And
Right.
then also there will be a video that'll follow up on the local TV channel.
Right.
And-
Channel 20 here.
And if that's not enough, you could come to the city commission study session on May 12th at 2:30, because the presentation will be similar. And from my standpoint, I just encourage everyone to come to the public meeting if they can, because the presentation will be very interesting, and then what I call the important part will happen after the presentation, when everyone can come and look at the display boards up close and up front and look where their property is and ask any questions that they might have about the overall project. So in person is better.
And we didn't even touch on property acquisition part of it, but that's going to be an important part of the project.
That will be discussed at our meeting. We'll have some maps of the area that we're talking about and kind of give an insight to that. And on the May 12th City Commission meeting, we'll have an engineering agreement with HDR for the property acquisition, or at least that's our plan right at this moment, assuming I finish it. We're very close to having that ready, but then HDR will be doing the acquisition. The title work and appraisals will be done by local Salina firms.
Okay, all right. So, yeah, if you own property along the river in some of these areas, it's probably pretty important to come to the meeting then.
And if you cannot make the meeting, and it's property that we will need to have a sliver of on the backside of along the river channel that we'd need to talk to you, we will be coming to you in the very near future to talk about the project.
Okay, all right. Well, it sounds really exciting. We're really looking forward to hearing all the progress that's been made on the project and getting a little better idea of what's going to happen here in the near future. So.
And I'm very excited after working on it for 20 years to actually have a project come to actually be moving dirt and have something to show, because many community members have been very anxious, and one in particular carries his shovel in the trunk of his car so he can help do some kind of a opening session or groundbreaking for the River Renewal project. if we don't start pretty soon moving dirt, I'm afraid he might get his shovel out and look for me. Many people are very anxious to see some work done.
Well, yeah, we've been talking about it for so long, and it's just taken a long time to get those ideas in place, and more importantly, to get the funding in place. That took a couple of years, actually.
It really did, and without the RAISE grant, our project would be very small, because typically the RAISE grant and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineer project was about a $30 million spend and now we're looking at nearly 69, 70 million for all of the project. Construction costs are up a little bit, so some inflation is factored in there just because we're looking at a project a couple of years down the road, and
Right.
the contractor's got to try to decide what does it cost for this 4-year project. So
Yeah, hopefully you can get like a volume discount.
I'll be very anxious to see the construction bids at the bid letting to see where we stand, because that'll help us a lot with our project. And we actually hope they come in lower, and we always
Right.
do, but we don't control the market.
Right. Okay. All right, so lots of exciting things going on. Another thing that's going on in the utilities department coming up is the hydrant flushing, annual hydrant flushing, and the chlorine addition to the water distribution system.
That's correct. We'll start it in the water plant area and then flush north and south, back and forth until we reach every fire hydrant in the city. And basically, it's a maintenance issue to, remove sediment and some of the material out of the pipe, because we have a lot of miles of old cast iron pipe. And so the flushing is a method to do that. And then we use the chlorine burnout because it has a very high disinfection rate. And
Right.
between the two, it's a maintenance procedure that we do every year. We also allows us to check and ensure that every fire hydrant works. And there's always a few that don't function as we wish them, so then they get on the list for replacement. So it serves a lot of good purposes from the standpoint of maintenance.
Yeah.
And improving water quality.
And just a couple of things to watch out for. If they're flushing hydrants in your area, you should probably avoid doing laundry, because
Yes.
it might stain your clothing while they're doing that.
It can, and we do have some product that you can put in to help with that in case you wake up and forget today's a day for flushing, and do that. And we do send out letters to different businesses that have, whether they have a fish or some type of aquatic life that chlorine in the water would be harmful to, and also to a lot of other, maybe your hairdresser, so that she knows we're doing that day and
Right.
doesn't turn your hair red. So there's a lot of upfront public notification that goes out to help the public know where we're at and what we're doing. And you kind of need to look, what happened the day before and your day and the day after, because the water's moving from the center of a town going out across the city to try to flush the material out. So it takes about a month to get that all done.
Right. Usually starts right around Memorial Day and goes to around the 4th of July.
That's the schedule. We try to start after Memorial Day and be done by the 4th of July. That's kind of our window.
And there'll be a map on the website,
Yes.
Which is salina-ks.gov, and you just go to the utilities department section, and as we get closer to the date of the start, there'll be a map up there.
And we'll be sending some news releases out so that hopefully that gets to everyone. We have a lot more methods than just sending it to the newspaper and hoping everybody sees it there, because
Right.
what we do at the city is several different modes of media, and that helps get it to a lot more people than what we maybe did years ago. So
Right.
appreciate all that.
Well, we're glad to do it. On the chlorine side, once that starts, you probably will notice a chlorine smell or a chlorine taste in the water.
Yes.
I think if you just get a pitcher and put some water in there and leave it out for a couple of hours, that should take care of it.
Yeah, I just would recommend what you want to drink or cook with is to put in a pitcher and set it in your refrigerator if you want to use it for drinking, or if it's for cooking, just let it set for a little bit. it'll dissipate the chlorine level in there just as it would if you, in your swimming pool at home, if you quit adding chlorine, that'll go away. But it will make you think you're at the swimming pool with a little bit of you can smell the chlorine. So
Right.
you'll have a pretty good idea. And it takes time for it to get pulled all the way through the city.
Oh, sure.
But over that month, it will come to your house.
Right.
Yes, it will.
Yes, it will. Okay. The other things that are going on in the utilities department, you're always replacing some of that cast iron pipe with more modern piping.
Yes.
And, I think you try to do about, 7 or 8 miles a year?
Well, the cost is a little more expensive than it used to be. When we started, it was about $100 a foot. Now we're up to $165 a foot. So
Okay.
we do somewhere around $2 to $4 million. I'm asking for $4 million this year because we have a project that's kind of what it takes to do the area, and we're working
Right.
through our budget on that. But at least $2 million a year,
Okay.
and more if we have an area that we're trying to work through. So it's very expensive,
Yes.
and there's the number of contractors doing it has been reduced in our area. Last project we bid, we had one big contractor bid. There's a lot of work for contractors right in Salina with all of the housing projects, and most of those are being built in greenfields where there is no water and sewer. So the demand for that type of contractor is very high in our area.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, if it's a great opportunity for people from maybe the general area here to get involved with.
Yes, there's jobs available there, and there's jobs available in the utility department working with the water piping.
Right.
It's a hard job.
It's a hard job, but it's also very important because with some of the age of the piping in there that you'll eventually get replaced. But in the meantime, they do spring the leaks, they do break, and the utility staff is instrumental and essential in getting those fixed in a timely manner.
Yes, when the temperature changes of the water in the river, the temperature in the air changes, it changes that water temperature in the pipe. Of course, the soil heats up, and when those temperatures vary, you can actually see movement that will break those pipes. And if there's a fire or something that would require a lot of water, that changes the pressure in the pipes, and we can have breaks in. We'll average somewhere on I'll call it a good year because that's less breaks, to a bad year of maybe up from 100 to 140, 150 main breaks a year, and that's really not too bad when we compare ourselves to other cities. We have about 340 miles of water main, so a lot of area, and I joke with some of the others in my work area that if they have a water main break or a sanitary sewer issue, they want it fixed very quickly, but if it's a pothole, you can drive around it for a while.
Right.
Our need is immediate. If there's an issue, they expect someone to be there, in a few minutes. We try to be there within 20 minutes or so
Yeah.
to help them. Sometimes we have 5 or 6 breaks at a time and have to bring in a contractor to help us with some of it due to number of staff. But in the really, really cold weather, really, really hot weather, because if you imagine all of the water towers up in the air are metal, they're just big old boiling pots,
Right.
heating up that water and changing the temperature. So there's a lot of things that go into that probably is not something you'd think of every day.
Right, right. And I actually did a video on how they repair a water main break last summer, and it was a really fascinating process. And they worked really, really quickly. I think within about 3 to 4 hours, they had that water main fixed. And of course, it takes longer to replace the street, but as far as the actual capping of that leak, it was probably within 3 to 4 hours.
That's pretty much the standard, not somewhere in the 2 to 4 hour range. There are those that can be more difficult for whatever reason, trying to find the leak, or if we fix that and then we find that it's still leaking, there may be another crack or something very close there. So, but that's pretty normal. So you went in the summer. When are you coming for the winter session?
Yeah, right.
And 20 below temperature.
Well, I mean,
David.
they had to do that in the middle of the snowstorm in January on East Iron.
Yes, you're correct. Well, I just want to offer that opportunity to you.
Okay, well, I'll consider it, and I'll let you know.
All right. Just call me.
Okay. Water plant, wastewater treatment plants are all, well, I mean, the South Water Treatment Plant is fairly new. The wastewater treatment plant's getting some upgrades.
We're nearing substantial completion on that project where we're actually able to use the structures for their intended use and starting down the path of fine-tuning the treatment processes for ammonia, nitrogen, and phosphorus removal. We intend to be completely done in about the end of the year, first part of 2026.
Okay. All right, well, there's so many moving parts to the utilities department, and your staff does a wonderful job of maintaining that and making it seem so seamless for people using the water in town. So we really appreciate your efforts and the efforts of all your staff.
Yeah, they do a great job. They take pride in getting there quickly and helping with the issue. Sometimes there's a lot of demands, and
Yeah.
we get stretched out, especially in those very cold winter months. That makes it hard. So we have to keep everybody warm and still get the job done.
Yeah. Okay. Well, make sure we come to the progress report on May 13th. Around 5:30, the presentation will start, and open house format at 6:30, so plenty of time for looking at the renderings and asking questions of staff. So.
And you can always look on the Utilities Department website, and you can learn a little more about the River Renewal Project if you like, or stop by my office. I love to talk about it.
Yeah.
So-
We've talked many times about it,
Yes.
so.
But thank you, David, for letting me talk about some of our fun things we do.
Yeah, and I really appreciate your time.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.